Ladies and gentlemen, the time has finally come. The Ronin 4D 8K is real. And for the last few weeks, I've been putting this thing through every single scenario that I can, from commercial productions to hiking in the wilderness, all of that just to answer a single question. Is this thing even worth it?
What a waste of love.
What's going on, guys? For the last year and a half, the Ronin 4D has been my go-to camera for all of my commercial productions. As somebody who runs a small team, the versatility that this camera provides me is kind of unmatched. But today we are talking about the pinnacle of DJI's imaging excellence, and that is the Ronin 4D 8K. Whenever you think about overkill, I hope you picture this camera because this thing is impressive. So today I'm going to tell you about every single spec that this camera has, how it compares to the Ronin 4D 6K, who this is even meant for, and how I've been using it on my commercial productions. Also, before I get too deep into this, the answer is yes. You can buy just the Ronin 4D gimbal to upgrade your current Ronin 4D. You don't have to buy the whole camera over again. Okay, let's talk about the specs. The Ronin 4D 8K is a 8K full frame 60 frames per second camera that is 8,192 pixels by 4,320 with no crop. This thing, the image it puts out is stellar. It also shoots 4K at 120 frames per second. That is also full frame, which means you're oversampling the 8K sensor to get an incredibly sharp 4K. So by using an 8K sensor to downsample into your 4K image, you're getting a better 4K image than you could ever get with a standard 4K camera. I personally believe this is where a lot of people are going to film a lot of content. The 8K sensor is wonderful and beautiful, but for those who don't need 8K, but they want the ability to shoot 8K, but mainly work in the 4K space, this is probably going to be the move for them. I personally believe the oversampled 8K into 4K is probably going to be where I film a lot of my content. It also films 5.5K at 60 frames per second, but the 5.5K mode is the Super 35 mode, so you're punching into the sensor. Using the S&Q mode, you can push this camera to 8K at 75 frames per second. There you will be shooting a 2.39:1 aspect ratio. So if you love filming stuff that's widescreen and you want to get the absolute most that you can get out of the sensor, then that's probably going to be the mode for you. For me, 60 frames per second is plenty for the full resolution look, but I'm probably going to be shooting everything around 30 frames per second, and I'll tell you why. This camera has dual native ISO, and it also has two film modes, standard and dynamic range expansion mode. Standard is going to get you a native ISO of 320 and 1600. This is also the mode that lets you use those higher frames per second, so 60 and 75, those are all going to be shot in the standard film mode. The dynamic range expansion mode has a native ISO of 800 and 4000. This gives you 14.7 stops of dynamic range, but limits you to 30 frames a second. For me, this is all that I use. Most of the commercial work that I do doesn't involve any slow motion work, so the 30 frames per second cap is fine for me. And also having the dual native ISO at 4000 works really, really well for the times that I'm out in the city getting those low light shots. I love having dual native ISO cameras. I don't even remember a time where I filmed without them. When it comes to codecs, you have three choices. ProRes RAW, to my understanding, comes with the 8K combo when you buy the camera. ProRes 422 HQ, one of the highest quality forms of ProRes 422, and H.264. That's it. There is currently no plan to add ProRes 4444 or 422 LT. They say if you're considering those codecs, then you should probably look into getting the 6K model, because the 8K model is basically high-res filmmaking all the time. And man, when you're doing such high-res filmmaking, the file sizes are huge. Currently, I think I'm getting about 30 minutes per terabyte, which is insane. You also get a built-in low pass filter, which was a completely separate purchase and installation for the Ronin 4D 6K. It comes standard with the 8K sensor. And of course, you get the things that I absolutely love about the Ronin 4D. You get built-in ND filters, 9 stops of built-in NDs, which have saved me almost every single shoot, because wanting to balance heavier lenses on the front of this thing, I can't put a matte box on this, so having something built into the sensor has been a dream for me. This is a convenience that cannot be understated, and I really do wish every single camera had built-in NDs. You also get the interchangeable lens mount system that can adapt to DL, L, PL, M, and E mount lenses. That is a lot to remember, but anything that you put on this thing can use autofocus using the LiDAR focus that's on top. Just overall a deadly combo. So yeah, everything that you had on the Ronin for the 6K is also available for the 8K, just better. When it comes to how this thing handles color, DJI is using their newly optimized DJI Cinema Color Science to focus on restoring vivid and natural skin tones and improving highlight transition, which improves the grading efficiency and texture of the look. This paired with the 14.7 stops of dynamic range really creates a stellar image, and I am so here for it because my brain didn't know if it was the 14.7 stops of dynamic range, if it was the 8K footage, if it was the highlight roll off, but it turns out all of that combined is what makes the image out of the 8K sensor look phenomenal. All right, let's talk comparisons. Basically, the Ronin 4D 8K and the 6K are identical. The only thing that changes here is the gimbal head. By the way, I absolutely love the fact that I can upgrade this camera and not get an entirely new camera. The detachable gimbal head is everything, and it makes it really, really cool in case something happens or something needs to come out in the future. I don't have to purchase an entirely new camera. That gets me thinking because maybe one day they'll upgrade the body for some reason. These two sensors, however, serve different people. For most people, if you want an amazing camera system, flexibility in your codecs, and a stellar image as well, then the Ronin for the 6K is probably the one for you. If you are looking for what is basically the only out-of-the-box cinema standard shooting system that films in 8K, or what I just consider to be the best 8K camera for under $15,000, this is it. DJI is targeting people who specialize in VFX work or who have like a very strict television guideline for their 8K footage. This is the sensor for them, but it's also targeting people who just want to get the absolute most out of their image, out of their camera. When I say stuff like this, I think about MKBHD, and he wants an 8K sensor just because he can have an 8K sensor. And for people like that, this is also for you. For me, it's about having the flexibility to bounce back and forth between 8K and stellar sharp 4K, but overall having the dynamic range that you get out of this camera has just been a dream come true for me. All right, so let's talk about how I've been using this thing for my work and some of the things that I found out while using ProRes RAW in DaVinci Resolve. As a lot of people know, they do not play nice together. The 8K has been a wonderful experience so far. Straight out of the box, it's just been 100% go, go, go. But the downside and compared to the 6K is the 6K has huge files, and these things are even bigger, which is to be expected. But taking that and then pushing those files into RAW, oh my God. You're getting about 35 minutes of record time per terabyte. Like, that is a massive file size, but personally, it hasn't been too bad because I don't really like spray and pray when it comes to filming our commercial productions. It's usually there's a 10 or 15 second clip and we stop. So 35 minutes of footage is still a lot, but it's overall, I'm used to the file size that comes from this because I film my commercial productions with ProRes 4444, and that is a very comparable size to what I get out of the 8K. When it comes to filming ProRes RAW and working in DaVinci Resolve, you need to do a few things. DaVinci Resolve can't read ProRes RAW, so we need to convert it into a file type that DaVinci Resolve can read, and we can still have access to all of our RAW image qualities. That's where Cinema DNG comes in. Cinema DNG is basically a raw file type that DaVinci Resolve can understand. So you get all the metadata that you shot into a file that DaVinci Resolve can read. And basically I'd use a converter like Play Pro Studio Assimilate. I believe that's the name of it. Depending on the compression that you choose when you're using Assimilate, it actually doesn't take that long to convert. Downside is, depending on the compression that you choose, the file size may be smaller, but it also may be way larger. Like, I took a 2 gig clip of ProRes and converted it to Cinema DNG, fully uncompressed, and it was a 26 gig file. That was an 8-second clip, by the way. But with a little compression, like 5:1 or 7:1, you can actually get it down to about 3 gigs for a 2 gig file. It's a lot of back and forth. Just overall, if you want to use Resolve, you're gonna have to jump through some hoops to convert the raw footage to something that Resolve can work with. Having access to RAW though has been a bit refreshing because you can push the footage so much further. All of your settings are still right there working with you, and you can basically get your footage to a really nice space before you even begin the color grading process. And that's what I love about RAW. If I mess up on set, or if I want to push the footage just a little bit further, recover a little bit more of the highlights, use the camera to its absolute full potential, that's what ProRes RAW is for. If you have questions about RAW filming with this camera and how that works in DaVinci Resolve, let me know down below, because I can either recommend you some great resources, or I can compile something together here on the channel that basically helps me remember and give something of value to you. The Ronin 4D does have its quirks, however. Something I noticed almost immediately is if you're using the dynamic range expansion mode, the Jello effect that you get from whip panning the camera back and forth is kind of insane. So DJI put a little note at the bottom, and it basically says, if you're gonna be whip panning and doing stuff that requires a lot of movement, the dynamic range expansion mode may hinder that process. But in the standard mode, that's majorly reduced. That's just something you wanna keep in mind. I'm still filming dynamic range expansion mode because, once again, I'm not doing too much fast stuff. Fun fact, the Jello effect on the 8K in standard mode is way more controlled, and it actually performs better than the Ronin 4D 6K. All right, there are 2 ways that you can purchase the Ronin for the 8K. You can buy just the sensor and gimbal in case you have a 6K already and you want to upgrade that 6K, or you can buy the full combo kit. The combo kit comes with their 17 to 28 millimeter lens, the 1 terabyte Pro SSD, the Pro SSD holder that actually lets you incorporate it into the camera, and the RAW license. Yes, RAW is a license that you have to purchase separately with these cameras, but it comes included if you're getting the 8K combo kit. I am not 100% sure if you're just getting the 8K if it has the RAW license. Overall, I'm genuinely impressed with this camera. I love that DJI is constantly changing and evolving the Ronin 4D. It is hands down their most versatile camera. And I know the 8K has been promised for quite a while. Like, I've had this and done so many jobs with this camera before I even got my hands on an 8K. But the fact that it's actually real and it's not something they gave up on does give me hope. That was one of the big risks I took on when I was getting this camera. Is this just going to be a gimmick that gets dropped and dies, or is this going to be something that they truly do double down and invest in? And it's really, really refreshing to see this camera getting more and more support, because truthfully, as a small teams operator, this thing, I don't really know what I would do without the flexibility of this camera. Going forward, the 8K sensor is probably going to be what lives on my camera. The file size may be huge, but I have a 72 terabyte storage drive, so I'm not too worried about file sizes. Having the flexibility to film incredible 4K footage and then be able to punch up to 8K whenever I need to is basically a dream come true. And the overkill that this camera brings into my life is a very welcome change. But with that all being said, that's all I have for today, guys. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you loved it, consider subscribing, because I'm bringing you more content just like this every week. So you guys stay safe, you're loved, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.